A bill moving through Capitol Hill could shield pesticide makers from legal liability. Joining us now to unpack this pesticide provision is Jeffrey Tucker, founder and president of the Brownstone Institute and senior columnist for the Epoch Times. Good afternoon, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for being here today. So since this provision is actually tucked away in a House Act, this could be the first time, some people are hearing about it. So walk us through the details.
It's an appropriations bill. It's called Section 453, and what it does is indemnify pesticides companies in U.S. courts for any kind of liability for claims of harm from their chemicals. The worry is that already our food supply is burdened, heavily laden with chemicals. The public's increasingly upset about it, and there's more and more litigation. The industry wants to protect itself against further litigation. If they get this liability shield, then all bets will be off, and our food will be increasingly dangerous for consumption and impossible to export. So this is a disastrous idea. They're essentially doing to our food supply what they've already done to the vaccine industry, and we have seen what that has done. So there's a lot of pushback on this, but lobbying on Capitol Hill is really intense from the industry. Right now, they're claiming that without this liability shield, that the food supply will be in danger, and we're all going to starve, or something along those lines.
And that's a really important point that you bring up, that the food everyone is eating could be impacted. So I think it's worth the time to go a little bit deeper into that. So if you could, what would it mean? What would it mean for everyone's food in America if this were to pass?
Yeah, it just means that if you're sick, if you're damaged, if your children develop diseases, and you have a suspicion that's traceable to chemicals in the pesticides, then you would have absolutely zero legal recourse, and companies could continue to develop these pesticides with patents and make a lot of money. Without any kind of responsibility for the consequences. This is contrary to all principles of free enterprise. And in a free enterprise economy, you bear liability and responsibility for the products that you make, and make sure that they're safe, not just that they work, but they're safe too. And in 1986, this is what happened to the vaccine industry, and we went from having something like 7 or 8 doses of vaccines to up to 80 now, because there's absolutely no legal repercussions for the companies producing these things. So if you expand that same liability protection to all the chemical additives and fertilizers and pesticides on our food, we're going to see another gold rush, and you won't have any legal recourse. This is unconstitutional. It's deeply dangerous. No one in the world will want our food. Already, there are chemicals in use in American food supplies and production that are banned in most countries in the world. So already people around the world are squeamish and worried about American food. When migrant populations come to the U.S., very often they just avoid them for fear of poisoning. And so we've got this problem, but as public concern is rising, now you see this industrial push to just simply erect an enormous liability shield so they can never be taken to court under any circumstances. They can avoid these really large judgments. But this is very dangerous for our health. And it's very dangerous, too, for the farmers that are trying to do it the right way with regenerative methods. They're going to continue to be pushed out of business, and we're going to end up with catastrophically chemicalized food, frankenfood for everyone. That's what this bill 453 really means. Despite what its supporters say, it is deeply dangerous for the American consumer. And as far as I'm concerned, people need to get active to stop this before it happens.
So Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been very vocal about, making America healthy again, right? So how would a provision like this, if made law, impact that movement and Trump's agenda? And what is the reaction that we're going to get from RFK Jr., do you think?
So you see what's happening here as RFK is pushing healthier products and developing voluntary agreements with companies to take the chemical dyes out of the food, to give us, like they did with Coke recently, cane sugar options versus the corn syrup options, which are heavily industrialized and processed. So you're seeing, on one hand, this push. This is precisely why industry is trying to head off more and more public concern about the safety of the food supply by building in this liability shield. So these two forces are butting up against each other. I promise you, RFK is very much against this kind of thing. I mean, this is the worst possible thing. He himself, before he became HHS secretary, was involved in major pieces of legislation against Monsanto and many other companies, and successful ones, that ended up with very large judgments. That's precisely what they're trying to, what the lobby is now trying to prevent. So they're going through Congress to stave off further regulation from HHS. So we've got a real battle brewing here over the American food supply. But it's interesting, it's happening even as public awareness of this problem is rising more, and you see it all the time, more and more people concerned about what it is that they're buying at the grocery store. These apps that examine the ingredients and pesticides and fertilizers and processing of foods are very popular. People are very concerned about this. So the industry is trying to move sort of surreptitiously through these weird methods like these appropriations bills to sneak in these liability shields that are clearly unconstitutional. And we're just now in the process of trying to alert people that this is going on, because if it does pass, it's going to be Armageddon for the American food supply. We won't be able to export to any countries in the world. This is why Trump needs to get active on this. He's very interested in pushing agricultural exports. They will absolutely die under these conditions. If public suspicion of our American food supply keeps rising, then we're going to have major problems. We should be going the opposite direction and getting more court cases against these chemical companies and these patented products and these fertilizers and pesticides that have been established through science and through court precedent as being deeply dangerous to the American public. So we need to stop this before it gets out of hand, like as in now.
So what can we do to stop it for those that disagree with this law?
Well, one thing is for average people to let their lawmakers know that they're aware of what is happening and not believe the claims that this isn't a liability shield, which is what they're doing. They're claiming it's not really a liability shield, but it absolutely is. We now have all sorts of forces on Capitol Hill that have never been active before, mostly sailing under the brand of MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again. They're the ones that are doing the hardest work on Capitol Hill, but they could use a lot of public support to stop this kind of thing from happening. You know, this is the problem you have in Washington right now. You have progress in some areas, but in order to stave off that progress, what I would call sort of the bad guys are working harder than ever. And we need to stop these kind of liability shields before they get in place, because then we're going to have years of litigation and courts have a very hard time ruling against something that Congress passes as a law. So this could be a permanent problem in the American food supply and doom a generation to a kind of quasi-poisoning with these chemical pesticides and fertilizers that have already compromised our food supply so much already.
Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for shedding a light on this important issue. Appreciate your time for coming on today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.